Okay, let's just go over that again.
Okay.
Mr. Pettit, you joined, I'll summarize, you joined the Company D, 1st Battalion, 105th in 1938.
Yep.
Your meetings were at the 15th Street Army in
Yep.
Troy. And you were at the summer camp in 1940 at Plattsburgh or DeKalb Junction.
Yes.
Do you remember that summer camp lasted 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
There was one that lasted 3 weeks, but I'm not sure about that, you know.
Yeah.
The normal time was 2 weeks.
Yeah. Did President Roosevelt come and talk to the division? Do you recall?
If he did, I wasn't there. I wasn't aware of it.
Okay. Now, in October of 1940, the 27th Division got federalized. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes.
And do you remember what you did in getting ready to go away? I mean, did you?
Well, yeah. We went into special training, and the company I belonged to was a heavy weapons company, and we had heavy weapon 30 caliber machine guns
Right.
and 81 millimeter mortars.
Which one were you working with? Which
The mortars.
mortars?
Yeah.
Okay. And you brought those with you to
Yes.
McClellan?
Yes. We practiced with them. We used dummy ammunition,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on we used HE heavy, which is 15 pounds of TNT in each shell, and we used smoke to mark the target, and then we would lay on all 4 guns onto that and fire for effect.
So there were 4 mortar in
There was 4 mortars
yeah,
in the platoon.
4 mortars in a platoon. Okay. And how many machine guns?
Wait a minute now. I'm trying to think. We had 3 sections. Actually, we had 6 mortars, and it was in a platoon because there was 3 sections:
Mhm.
1st, 2nd, and 3rd section.
Okay.
At that particular time, I had the 3rd section, which was 2 mortars, 2 81 millimeter mortars to each section,
Okay.
and there was 6 squads. They call them squads. Each one of the squads had a mortar. The same with the machine guns.
Okay.
These were the heavy caliber machine guns, and there was the same in the machine gun platoon.
Okay. So one platoon was mortars, and second platoon was machine guns, and
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. And then we didn't have rifles because C Company was next to us, and then A Company, they were rifle companies.
Right. Right. Okay. So you didn't have your own.
Yeah, we all had rifles. Yeah,
You had rifles,
and,
yeah.
and sometimes some of us had, like sergeants at different points, that had sidearms.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone had a rifle also. And this was a 30 caliber Garand,
Okay.
automatic or semi-automatic rather.
You know, M1. Let's go.
M1, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Now you didn't go down there you didn't go down there to McClellan with M1s though. You still had the old 3 Springfields. Is that right?
We had Springfield bolt action rifles
Yeah.
down there.
Okay.
These came in. These Garands came in later on.
Right. When you're down at McClellan.
Yeah, right,
For
right.
the maneuvers.
Down there we had the bolt action 30
Yeah.
caliber.
Okay. Now, do you remember the trip down to McClellan?
Oh yeah.
What can you tell us about what it
Well,
was
the
like?
trip down was quite an experience because we put the whole division on a train, and it was a big long train, and of course there was some raising the devil on the train. Everybody had their own ideas about what was going on and what we were going to be doing and everything like that. But, it was a Pullman. We had sleepers. So we could, But a lot of the fellows slept in the seats, and they kept awake. Being young and everything like that, nobody got much sleep with the gift of gab and all this kind of stuff going on, and they're talking.
Crap games,
Yeah,
card games?
everything, card games, crap games,
Yeah.
and stories, and you name it,
Yeah.
the whole thing. And
How long did you remember it took to get down there?
I think it took about 3 days.
3 days. Okay, when you got to McClellan,
That was a real mess.
what were you, just tell me what it was like when you first
We all
got there.
had they had these foundations, wooden foundation platforms, and you had to put the tents up on them.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't do this. They had somebody else at the camp putting the tents up. Because I think this would have been a real mess, because these guys didn't expect to do anything like that, So then when we got to McClellan, we had to get organized, and we get it all settled in and everything like that. Then we started doing exercises, and we had machine guns that were on two-wheel carts.
Mm-hmm.
And you had 2 men that used to pull, and if you got to a stiff hill or anything like that, you got another man, a couple of men on the back to push to get up the steep hill, and we'd go out and we'd set up different exercises and things like that for firing the weapon.
Firing the weapon.
Different places and different things, and then we had night practices also, and we had compass reading. Well, we had the whole works, signals, flares, and then there was a lot of guard duty, of course.
Mm-hmm. How's the food?
The food was excellent. We had no problem with that, because we had what they called the chow hounds, and they'd go back 3 or 4 times, and then you couldn't get them out of the bed in the morning because they were all filled up so much.
Did you go ahead?
It was a real experience, and then we used to have close order drill. We'd go out in the parade field, and we'd parade around. Everybody said this was a waste of time. How was that going to be effective against the enemy? But that's the idea of that, was to coordinate your mind and body to be able to do these things. And
Who was commanding D Company at that?
D Company was commanded by this gentleman right here, Captain Walter Vernier.
And he went down to McClellan?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Captain Walter Vernier.
All right.
And he lived over in Waterville here, and he was in the company when I joined. I got a leave of absence at one time, and went to Philadelphia and got a job there and worked in a paper corporation. And when they thought the war was going to break out, I got the discharge in there. They brought me back in again, because it was only a leave of absence. It wasn't a discharge. They called it a convenience of the government. And I have it on the wall in there. I can show it to you if you'd like to see it.
So when did that happen? When did you?
That was around early 1940, before the hostilities broke out,
But you stayed the whole time at at McClellan.
Oh yeah.
I mean, from October 40 until.
Now when I come back of my leave of absence and get back in the company again, then we went to Fort McClellan.
Okay, that was beforehand.
Yeah, that was beforehand.
Yeah. So you're at Fort McClellan, and the tents are up, and you're doing all the drills that you mentioned. Did you go into the town of Anniston from time to time?
We went into Anniston, Alabama, almost every other night, if we could get a pass.
Yeah.
We got this clean.
Right.
And a lot of us didn't, so we had to stay in camp. If you were a non-commissioned officer, like I was, a corporal at that particular time, they put you in charge of a detail or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we went to Anniston, we went to Birmingham, and different places around. And at that particular time, down in Anniston, Alabama, they had a big, huge tent. What they called an old lady by the name of Sister Bessie. It was a colored organization, religious organization, and she would put on sort of a church festival or something like that, then they'd have some different sandwiches and stuff like that. And we used to go down there and get into that once in a while until they threw us out. But yeah, we went around the town and we met a lot of nice people down in Anderson, and they were very nice to us, very good to us, and they appreciated us being there and everything like that.
Yeah.
So we try to keep our nose clean with these people.
Do you remember the Tennessee maneuvers?
Yes.
What do you remember about that?
I'm trying to get. I can't seem to get too much of that into my mind.
They weren't as extensive as the Arkansas Louisiana maneuvers.
No.
Yeah.
No. And then we were at Fort Ord.
Right. That was after.
After that,
Yeah.
I think.
Do you remember anything about the Louisiana Arkansas maneuvers?
Not too much. I can't seem to recall too much about that.
Okay. It was one of those things, I understand, that nobody really wants to remember because it was so hot and
Yeah, it was
sticky.
but
That's probably it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, of course. Well, let me go back. And when you get back from maneuvers in the summer of '41, we all expected to be discharged in October of '41.
there's another place that we went to, Guntersville Dam.
Yeah, that was after December.
Yeah,
7th.
you remember, you can recall that. Guntersville Dam, they put us on guard
Right.
on top of the dam,
Yeah.
because at that particular time, they were afraid that we were going to get a little espionage and they were going to
yeah.
blow the dam up.
Right.
Now, I remember one particular time that we were on guard on top of the dam. We had machine guns set up there, and there was some riflemen, but we had a battery of machine guns, and we had them aimed down below the dam. And this rowboat was coming up, rowing up. So we asked them to stop and turn around and go back.
Mm-hmm.
But either they didn't hear us, or they didn't pay that much attention to us. So we were afraid that they might have some explosives on that rowboat and get into the dam with them. So we all, the whole battery of machine guns opened up on them.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't hit them. We didn't fire to hit them.
Right.
We fired to the right and in front of them, mostly in front of them to keep, and it almost seemed to me like they suddenly had a motor, because I never saw oars work so fast in my life. They went back down that river in a hurry, and I can recall that much about that anyway.
Okay. Well, that's good. Just going back here before December 7th, say you were back from maneuvers and they were giving passes, I guess, and leaves to some people. And do you remember about that time that there was the Ohio movement? Does that ring any bell to you? Ohio, over the hill in October. Do you remember that at all?
That doesn't strike a bell with me at all.
Okay. It doesn't to a lot of people, but it comes up, and probably the newspapers were reporting that it was the 27th. There was a lot of unhappiness because they weren't going to get out when they thought they were going to get out, and they were threatening to desert and go over the hill. And
yes, right. I recall something about that, and I also recall that a lot of the married men who were married and had families got out.
Right, at that time, yeah.
They were discharged and released.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why we had to get some more replacements.
Right. Okay, so then we're at Fort Ord. We go out to Fort Ord.
Fort Ord, I recall this camp as being on a very steep hill, and we did a lot of gunnery practice there, machine guns, rifles, 45s. We had to we got classified and fire all the weapons that were in the division, especially the non-commissioned officers and the officers. And I can recall there that we had I think of the town next to it there. It's so well known. We used to go into town.
Monterey?
Monterey, yeah, Monterey. We went into Monterey on passes and different things like that, and we had, you know, got into the usual squabbles and troubles.
Okay. Now, then you went on board.
Yeah, we
Would you
got
come
on-
out of San Francisco when you got on board the ship for Hawaii?
Aquitania.
Aquitania.
Yeah,
Everybody
Aquitania.
remembers the name of the
We had
Aquitania.
the full division on the Aquitania.
Yeah.
Which at the particular time I can recall it being around 10,000 men, and plus the crew. That ship was manned by Australians.
It was Australian crew?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we made the big mistake by calling them limeys,
Oh dear.
and they took a dim view on that because
Yeah.
they don't like to be associated with them.
Yeah, with the British.
Especially at that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but their brogue and the way they talk sounded a lot like an Englishman, to us anyway, because
Yeah.
we weren't too familiar with either one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I can recall it being such a huge ship. I think it was 8 stories high and with a 4-stacker,
Mm-hmm.
like there was a few 4-stackers made at that particular time, the Aquitania and Lusitania, and there was a sister ship. I can't think of the name of it, but the one that they just made the movie of.
Titanic.
Titanic is also a 4-stacker. There was a few 4-stackers made. But this was a huge ship, and it had ballrooms and tennis courts and, you know, you name it, everything like that. And, I spent most of my time up on what they call the sun deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I can recall, because I didn't want to be down below, I think we were 5 days out when the radio gave out a report that we were sunk by a Japanese submarine. And this ship could go 35 knots, which was very fast, it was probably around 40 miles an hour, and this is the fast of a big ship like that. But the captain said that we were zigzagging so that the submarines couldn't catch up to us, or couldn't lay off, because the submarines are slow,
Right.
and they had to lay off and wait for you. But if you changed your lanes,
Right.
it's very doubtful that they would be able to contact us with a torpedo.
So that was a false report that.
Yeah, that's what it was, really. To get, like, Tokyo Rose with her big mouth,
Yeah,
you know, giving
right.
all this information that all this was dead and we're going to give up and all this kind of
Yeah,
stuff. We used to listen to her on the radio.
Yeah.
You're lost, you might as well give up and this and that.
Yeah.
And we were told not to pay no attention to that because she was just, that was her job.
Right.
And I can remember about 4 days out, we got hit with a bunch of flying fish. And they were all over the decks, and everybody was slipping and sliding all over the place with these things. And we couldn't believe, because I never saw, and I know everybody else, most of them, maybe the Australian crew might have, but we had never seen flying fish before. They were slapping us in the face and falling on and going down in the chute, and my head was a mess. We had to throw them overboard. And then we got by them, it was all right. And then when we got to Honolulu, they all crowded to the deck, you know, because this was a big thing. See, they put us on the Big Island of Hawaii.
Okay.
That was our first place that I put it on.
What did you do there?
Well, we set up our camp, and we were supposed to set out guards and everything like that. But you know, you got a whole bunch of men. They just get off with a boat and everything like that. So they decided they were going to give us a 24-hour leave. And they had set up tents in different parts of the area, and they had gallon jugs of sake, Japanese wine. And they would take this gallon jug of sake and they'd set it in a basin of warm water and heat it up. And the jug of sake was 50 cents. That's what you paid for, a whole gallon of this stuff for 50 cents. And we sat around the table, all of us sat around the table with tin cups. They give you a tin cup. Pour it in and pour it in. We get through with one jug and we'd order another. And we got through about 3 or 4 of them things. And at that time, nobody was a great drinker as far as I was concerned. And we tried to get up and we were ready to leave. We got to get back to camp. We couldn't get out of the chair. And one of the fellows, I can't think of who it was, he said, if you help me out, I'll help you out. We reached over and the both of us fell on the floor, on the ground. There wasn't no floor, it was just on the ground. They hit a tent. So we decided we'd all lay down on the ground because we couldn't stand up, we couldn't walk. And then when we finally got back to camp, the MPs helped us back to camp. And they decided they'd forgive us. We didn't need forgiveness because the head was hurting so bad and everything. We felt so lousy that we felt like we were going to shoot ourselves. You know? And we went back the next day and did the same thing over again. You know.
So then there was a time when the division was pulled back together, and what Schofield? Were you at Schofield Barracks? Is that?
Yes, we went over to Schofield Barracks to sit up there, and we did a lot of drilling, practicing the rifles, and you know, on the range and different things like that, and we did a lot of things to get ready for.
How about amphibious training? Did you do a lot of that?
Yes, we had that too. We had what they call stream expedience. Extreme expedience.
Extreme expedience?
Extreme expedience was where you had to get across the stream with all your equipment, or a body of water, what they call stream expedience. You had to get across that with all your equipment, and a lot of them didn't make it. A couple of them drowned, I guess. And then you had to jump off a tower with all your equipment. I can't remember how tall that tower was now, whether it was 50, 75 feet or something like that. But you had to take your helmet, and you had your pack and all your rifle and everything, ammunition. You had to take your helmet and hold it upside down over your head, because normally your helmet would be on and your strap would be under here. But when you jumped off the tower, if you hit the water, it went up under the helmet, the strap was under here, it broke your neck. So you had to jump with both hands on your helmet like this and hold it upside down, because the helmet's an important factor in battle.
Sure.
You've got to keep it with you. So then when you got out in the water, you put the helmet back on, strapped it under there, and you swam for shore.
You still had the old style round helmets on at the time.
They did at that time, yeah. You know, I designed a new type helmet, and during the last part of the war, and I sent it into Washington, and General Greiner, who was the commander of Pacific troops at the time, gave me a commendation for this, and he said he'd like to have a helmet made like that for himself. Well, when it reached the Fort Benning, Georgia, for examination of it, was toward the end of the war, so they decided they weren't going to put that kind of money into it when the war was almost over.
Yeah.
So they sent it back and said it was no further use. You know, later on, I see the helmet that I was designed and wearing today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, but did you actually? I mean, the stream expedience and that. How about boats?
Yeah, we had to get in. I think there was 6 or 8 men. We had to launch this boat against heavy waves. We had to get it out beyond the waves that were coming in, and this was a very difficult task.
With full equipment.
With full equipment. You'd get in the boat, and everybody would push it out, and they'd jump in the boat, and the wave would tip it over and knock you back on the shore again. And you had to keep that up until you made it, until you learned how to do it. And it was a very difficult job to do. And a lot of fellows said they'd rather be shot than do it. Well, he said if you don't do it, you're liable to get shot anyway. So, and then we had infiltration course, where you crawled on your belly on the ground, and they fired live ammunition over your head.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't fire it too far over your head, so if you stood up, you were carried away.
I'm familiar with that. I went through that.
Yeah, did you go through that, did you?
Well, yeah.
You had to have your rifle and everything, and you had to do this with your rifle as you were crawling to keep that barrel from getting dirt in it. When you got to the other end of that infiltration course, there was an officer and a couple of sergeants there, and the first thing they do is they examine your rifle. If you had dirt in that thing there, you go back and start all over again.
Yeah.
And believe me, when you got through it, you were very happy that you got through it, let alone having dirt in your rifle.
Yeah.
But they were doing it, and we all understood afterwards that this is for your own sake, you know.
How about grenade practice?
Yes, we had that too, and to learn how to throw a grenade, they had a sort of a looked like a football with tires hanging down on a rope, and you'd have to try to throw your hand grenade at a certain distance through the tire. And you didn't throw it like a baseball, you brought it back like this and this way.
Stiff arm, yeah.
Stiff arm, right. And they kept you at that with all they had in there was the primer, because there was no powder in there.
Yeah.
And the primer would go off after you released the handle, and then they keep you at that until you got fairly accurate at throwing it, and then they'd have it throwing it in holes and different things like that. Mm-hmm. Or throwing it at a make-believe tank or something like that. They had a cardboard tank. And a lot of the guys would bring it back like this, and the grenade would come out of their hand, down. And even though everybody knew there was no powder in it, it sure scattered them anyway.
Absolutely.
And let's see, we had to climb. We had to climb up over fences, huge fences, and get down on the other side of them. And then we had to go across a stream on a pulley with a rope.
Mm-hmm.
You'd get up there, and it was on a slant, and you'd get going, and some didn't make it. They let go. They went into the water. And they get on the other side anyway. This is all part of the training. And then we'd have this jungle training, you know, and it's where they get in and you shoot at the first thing you saw, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if you weren't careful, you'd be shooting your own officers and your own men.
Did they bring in guys who had already been in combat with the Japanese for jungle training?
I don't recall anything like that. I recall them bringing in special, they may have, but I think what they brought in was men that had been in some kind of a battle to give you a little more experience in how to handle different situations.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't recall them bringing anybody in that was already had been in combat with the Japanese.
Okay. Okay. Well, did you practice landings in the landing craft?
Yes, we practiced landings after we got over in the islands with what they call an LCI, mm-hmm. and it had ladders on both sides. When this ship would get close to the beach, the ladders would drop down, and then you would run down the ladders onto the beach. This wasn't particularly combat landing craft, which they use for a landing craft with a ramp that drops down. This was, we didn't do too much work on that. A couple of times, I guess it was. We went over into one of the islands, and a lot of the fellows got sick, you know. Like my wife here, she gets sick in a bathtub. She has to take, you know.
Like seasick and
motion sickness.
Motion sickness.
And sometimes all you'd have to do, and you know, you got a lot of guys that they like to fool around. All you'd have to do is mention salt pork or something like that, you know, or some other thing that wasn't very nice to talk about. And the guys get sick and they'd fall off the ladder into the water, you know.
Well, I guess that's about Hawaii. Let me ask you this now. Do you recall, are a lot of people transferring out of the unit during that period? I'm thinking now, say in summer of 42 and 43 in there. A lot of guys transferred out, OCS and other places.
Yeah, they were. They put on a bulletin board that there were different organizations and different things that now. Let me say this. It was, I can't remember what island we were on, but I think it was Oahu. Or I could have been the Big Island, but I'm not sure now. But they put a bulletin on the board that anyone that wanted to volunteer for immediate action could sign up for this. So I remember in particular, there was a fellow named Ralph Peratt. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I think he was a sergeant also. But both of us signed up for immediate action at that particular time.
What were your rank? Were you a corporal or a sergeant?
I was a sergeant at the time, and he was.
Okay.
At the last minute, he went over and took his name off the board, left mine on there. I didn't know he did this. Not that it made that much difference anyway, but we were kind of pals, you know, kind of hung together. And Charlie Bell was another one. And Charlie Bell and myself, they shipped us out the next morning, and we went to Guadalcanal with the 1st Marine Division.
Gee.
And on the way in, on the landing barge, I was in one landing barge over here, and he was in another one over here. And they had the ramps up, of course, to deflect any shell fire coming from the shore. And he was waving to me. And Charlie Bell was a very nice guy. He was waving to me, and I waved back at him. And about that time, a shell hit the landing barge and blew it to smithereens. And he was gone before he even knew it. And I landed, and I was on there for 13 days, and then I was transferred to another island they call Canton Island. And that's way out in the Pacific. It's an atoll. And
Canton, C-A-N-T-O-N, again.
C-A-N-T-O-N, I guess
Yeah,
it is, Canton
okay.
Island. And the 333rd Fighter Squadron was there, and I was attached to that. And we had half tracks, and we had PBY Catalinas that would go out every day and search the water for submarines. And then we had P-39s, Air Cobras. There was a squadron of them there, and then we had B-24s. And I was on that island for 10 months. And they put me in charge because of I had previous training in chemical warfare. I was in charge of the chemical warfare on that island. And I was on there for 10 months. And then my father got, I think it was, I can't think of the date anyway, but he became very ill, and I got an emergency furlough to go home. And they flew me from there to San Francisco, and then from there back to Troy. And then I went back and joined my division just before we went to Saipan.
So you went back to the 27th?
Yeah, back to the 27th before we went to Saipan.
Okay. I like to talk about that, obviously, but how about Guadalcanal? Did you see any action in Guadalcanal?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you recall anything?
But my division wouldn't know anything about that.
Right.
But I did see some action there, yeah, because we I was attached to the 1st Marines, and I was in the, they gave me the commander of the guard of an MP unit. And we would have to take a Jeep and escort the nurses from their billet area to the hospital. And we would take them down and bring them into the hospital and go pick them up and bring them back again. We were armed at the time, of course they weren't, and we had to really fly with those Jeeps and get them going as fast as we could, because the jungles around this was, I'm trying to think of the airport now. They were putting the airport in at that particular time.
Henderson Field?
Henderson Field, right. They were putting Henderson Field at the particular time. And the Marines were getting knocked off like peas on a, and I think one time this colonel come over, I don't know his name, he was a Marine colonel, he come over and he said that some of us were being shipped out, and they wanted us for another. So I went to Canton Island at that particular, yeah. But I can recall being getting on a big bulldozer, the biggest one they ever made, I ever saw in my life. And it could push a house over. And they raised the blade up in the front. And they would go in and destroy machine gun nests with that. They just bury them with it.
The Marines would?
Yeah. They just bury them with it. They wouldn't bother using ammunition or nothing. They just run over and bury them with it. And I can remember them shooting at us with machine guns and different things like that, and hitting that blade, that giant blade, and bouncing off and going in all different directions.
That's what they did in the Persian Gulf War.
Yeah. That's very effective.
Yeah.
You know, you figure you're a modern knight, you've got all kinds of armor in front of you there. And,
you want to take a short break here, then we'll talk about Saipan?
Fine.
Okay, let me just put a stop here. Okay, let's talk now about going to Saipan. Do you remember the trip on the transport to Saipan?
Yeah.
What was the name of that? I can't remember right now.
The name of the ship?
Right. It's not important.
I can't remember it, but we called them all the USS Bomber. I can't remember the name of that ship, but I can remember getting off of the damn thing over the cargo.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about that then.
Well, we got a few miles off of Saipan, and the Navy was shelling the hell out of it. The Marines hadn't gone in yet, and there was a lot of Navy vessels out there, various types. There was, I recall at least one aircraft carrier, but I don't know. There was a battleship, and they were shelling with their 16-inch guns. So they gave it a 24-hour, I think, barrage, and then the Marines went in, and they told us we were going right in back of them. So they had the cargo nets, so we went over the side and got into the landing barge. And when we got into the landing barge, they told us we weren't quite ready to go in yet. Now, these landing barges were diesel operated. So they had to circle. They couldn't sit still in the water, because then they were more prone to getting knocked out of the water with a shell. So they had to circle around until we got the signal to go in, because the Marines hadn't yet landed. So we start circling around, and this diesel fuel was getting to everybody, making everybody nauseous. So they had what they call the coxswain or something like that,
right.
The director of the landing craft. So we had a series of them, and they decided it was time to go in. So we went in, got in on the shore, and they dropped the front end of it down, and we start running off of the damn thing. And we hit the beach, and the first thing we saw was a whole bunch of dead Marines laying all over the beach. And they were putting toe tags on them. And there was a whole bunch of Marines sitting there around the dead ones. I guess they were buddies and stuff like that, you know. So the one guy, I remember him in particular, he said, "Boy, are we glad to see you guys." Coming from a Marine, I figured that was quite a compliment.
Right.
You know, because they figure they can win the war all by themselves. They don't need nobody.
Right.
But how do you want me to do it? You want me to go on with this thing, or no?
Well, I mean, let's see. Okay, so
You ask the questions and all that.
yeah, we'll just kind of. When you hit the beach, you saw the dead Marines. I could put it in I know the timing, just but you landed on sometime probably on the 17th. June
Yeah, I think that
17th.
was right. Yeah.
What was the where was the first movement you made with
The first
battalion?
movement we made is we hit the sand face down. That was the first movement,
Okay.
because there was a few shells flying around, and you know, and you got to play ostrich right away.
Right.
Get down. So the guy next to me, I can't recall who it was now. He says, "Why not dig a little bit deeper here?" He says, "Our asses and heads are up in the air." I said, "All right, so we dig down." So we started digging down a little bit, and this is the principal movement of a soldier. They call this the dog face. Get down as far as you can.
Yeah.
You know, and not like the Marines. They're going to fight. They're going to fight. They're going to run in there and fight. And the Japanese told us later on, when we captured, that they would rather fight the Marines than they would us. We couldn't understand that. And we asked him why, and he said, "Well, they're easy targets. And you guys get down in holes, and we go like this to you, and you go like this back to us."
Yeah.
So the idea that at that particular time it cost $10,000 to train a soldier, and they wanted to, at least the soldiers anyway, the infantry, to learn how to last more than one day.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
which was more practical. Of course, the Marines are only there for one thing, that's to make an initial attack and get the beach cleared out. So we did a little digging there to get down a little ways, and we ran into some bottles. And one of the fellows said, "What the hell is in these bottles?" I said, "Oh, it was a whole bunch of bottles of Japanese sake." So we figured as long as we were in the hole there, and we were thirsty anyway, so might as well take a swig of sake, you know. We did. And that helped our spirits out a little bit. And somebody said that maybe they ought to give us a little more of this and we could fight better. You know?
So then, when you moved off the beach, do you recall where you went and what you were doing?
Well, we moved inland. We ran into a lot of Marines, and we saw a lot of dead bodies here and there. And
Any dead Japanese by this time?
yeah, there was a lot of dead Japanese laying all over the place, and the stench was terrible. And that's what I said in the poem that I wrote. Went like hell trying to get away from the smell. I can recall one thing that was very upsetting. We were going up this road. It was very dusty, and there was tanks going along, and there was a combination of soldiers, Marines, and I see some Navy personnel that was in there too. They were in there to search out and find these landmines. They would dig them out and leave them when they opened so people could see them. They were specially trained for that.
The Navy guys were?
Yeah, they were specially trained for that. And they dig them out and leave them exposed. They wouldn't blow them up or anything like it. They put little flags next to them, one on each side, so you could see what the hell was there and keep away from them. And that red flag meant danger. And I remember this one particular time that this tank was going along, and I saw a dead American. He was lying on the side of the road. His head had been in the road, and the tank had ran over his head. And it was an awful looking sight. And I remember saying at that time, how the hell is anybody? Well, of course they all had dog tags, so that's the reason.
Yeah.
When we got in, I can recall the next thing that we got into was Osceola Airfield.
Right.
They changed the name of that later on to another name. It later became another name. I can't recall what name it was. But that particular time it was Osceola.
Inslee?
Could have been. But they changed the name of it later on. But at that time it was Osceola Airfield. And night started coming on. And we saw these planes flying around, Navy planes and Jap planes, and even at night, it was getting dark, and they were shooting at each other. They were the dogfights.
Mm-hmm.
And this one Japanese plane came over our position, and our ammo consisted of something that could have got us in a lot of trouble, because it's against the rules of war. We would have one ball ammunition, which is a regular ammunition, and one armor piercing, and one tracer. That's the way our ammunition was set up in the belt for the machine guns.
Mm-hmm.
And in our clip that went in, it was a 7-shot clip that went into the rifle. One ball, one armor piercing, and one tracer. Now the tracer was first. It was one tracer, one ball, and one armor piercing. So the tracer was the first one that you would acquire. But then you could use that as a guide, because you could see the tracer, especially at night.
Yeah.
And you know where the hell it was going.
Right. You just
So
follow
this
it.
Japanese plane flew over, and everyone that had a rifle fired at them up in the air.
Okay, Ernie, we were at Osceola Airfield, and you were watching the
Dogfight.
dogfight,
Yeah.
and you were firing at the Japanese plane.
Yep. Now there's another thing. I can recall very. We were putting these mortars where they shouldn't be put. Anyway, we're in the bunkers. We're in the plane bunkers with the mortars and hunkered down, watching the dogfights. And finally, I guess our Navy planes sort of run out of fuel. They had to go back to the aircraft carrier, and the Japanese disappeared. They took a pretty good look, and I saw a few of them hitting the water. One thing about the Japanese plane, it was fast, maneuverable, and because it was light, they didn't have no armor. They didn't have no armor on them things.
Mm-hmm.
They could knock them down real fast. So then, when this fight was over and the morning came, we were all cold and everything. We were sleeping in the bunkers in the open. We woke up the next morning, and there was a Navy plane. We hadn't noticed it during the night, but it was a 2-seater. What they call a TBF, torpedo bomber and fighter. And it had crashed right there on the airfield. And there was 2 men. They were both dead. One of them had his head cut off. And his arm was sticking out like this. Now this is a true story. His arm was sticking out like this. So it was one of these guys that was a real troublemaker that we had in our company. His name was Doc Sokolowski. He was a real hard case. Nobody knew what he was doing, but he went over. At that particular time, we were more interested in getting our heads shot off than what he was doing. But he went over and he took his shovel, which we all carried, a folding shovel to dig it. He cut off this American pilot's finger because it had a diamond ring on it. He chopped it off, and he took the diamond ring off of the finger, and he put it in a can with an old truck there. I guess he got a hold of some gasoline, put a little gasoline in there, and he cleaned the diamond ring, then put it in his pocket. I don't think he even want to put that down.
Well,
But it's on there. But
it's all right.
That's a true story.
Yeah, I'm not, it's just,
But I said to myself, this son of a bitch should be shot
yeah.
because he's looting the dead, and he's doing it on an American soldier. Now, there was somebody back home, his wife or somebody would want that ring.
Sure.
Well, anyway,
So after that,
we moved out of there because we weren't doing no good. We weren't really doing no good there. The airfield was all taken over.
okay. I'm going to show you a map of Saipan, and so you see where Oswego Airfield is.
Yeah.
Can you if you can you trace sort of like where you guys went over the next? I'm trying to fill in the time between Oswego and Tanapag. You know, can you recall sort of like where you went?
Let's see. Oh, we went. That's Garapan. We weren't down close to that. We were at that's Garapan.
Right over here on the left side. I'm looking.
Oh, yeah.
Here's Oswego. Did you move up this
Yeah,
side?
right.
Like how about Chop Chop Village? Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
We went through. Oh, this is something you would be interested in. After we get on the island, we marched up a hill, and up above us was like a mountain with caves. So they told us that we were going to take a rest there. So we had some of us on both sides of this trail. Some were on this side of the trail, and some were on this side of the trail. And we knew the Japanese were up in these caves, and they were going to send men up there. They were going to send somebody up there to blast them out of there using satchel charges and stuff like that, you know, or flamethrowers. Any way to get them out of there. But in the meantime, we knew that they had prisoners up there, and they were these island natives, and they were called Chamorros. And we told them that if they let these natives loose, freedom, that we would not kill them. We'd let them loose. We'd let them come down and give up, surrender. So they sent out, I think, about 100 of these Chamorro natives, and they marched down, and they all had crosses. Most of them had crosses, and they held them in front of them. And there was better than 3/4 of them were young girls and women, and they're mostly all pregnant because they had raped them and kept them when they kept them in captive. And they marched down by us, right between us, and they went down to the going towards the beach down there where they could be taken care of. And they were throwing us all kinds of salutes and everything like that, that we got them loose. And they went down, and anyway, it was an awful, it was quite an impressive thing to see, because you knew that they were to be pitied. You know, they had no way of defending themselves or anything like that. Most of them, all they wore was a little shawang or something like that, you know, and a thing across their breast. And after that, the Japanese decided they weren't going to give up anyway.
So, okay.
they sent a special detachment up there to seal the caves up. So they went up there and they just sealed them in. Didn't even bother trying to get them out, they just sealed them up.
Okay. So, do you,
I'm trying to recall, we went to, we got down to, I'd say near Tanapeg Harbor,
okay.
where the seaplane base was.
But this was some few days after.
A few days after that, right. And we set up a perimeter there and got our guns and everything ready because we knew the Japanese were out in front of us. And of course, they were all around us. They were all over the place. Let me, hold on a minute. Let me get this open. A foray upon the northern tip of the islands for civilians to come to safety by the American-held territory. It was estimated that from 10 to 15,000 Japanese civilians were crowded into the small sector. The enemy garrison still held on Saipan. We dropped pamphlets to notify the civilians that if they would come over to the lines, they would have safety, water, and food. The civilians included business numbers of government officials and white-collar workers with families, American Marines, and Army troops pushed in to destroy the remnants of the defending forces. The Japanese held about 2 miles in each direction from their last position, except for, it's hard to read, from an area from Marty Point at the northern and down western and towards Tanapeg Harbor. The Japanese already lost everything of value on Saipan except Marty Point. The airfield where most of the troops apparently had chosen to take their last stand. This point is situated at the base of a sheer cliff 600 feet high with a sawtooth edges. The Japanese were unable to maneuver in their small areas, but they fought bitterly. Now they took and they threw, you can have these if you want them. They took and they jumped over and threw their babies and everything over the cliff, rather than to surrender.
I remember.
Because the emperor wouldn't put up with that crap.
Yeah.
The Japanese were not supposed to surrender to nobody.
Right.
It was.
Incidentally, there's a movie.
Did you have a copy of that?
No, I haven't seen this. This is probably.
No, that's right off the hospital.
That's the hospital ship.
Yeah.
There's a movie, just for your information, that
Can we see one of these?
partially depicts.
I took that off a Japanese officer. I also took a Nambu pistol, 7mm, a dagger, and a saber. They took everything away from me before I got on the boat. I had this and the Japanese Nambu pistol, 7mm. All I got left is the clip. And a lot of guys had a lot of different things. I've made some notes in here. I don't know if you'd be interested in hearing them or not. The dates I can't tell too much about.
When did you make these notes? At the time? At the time that you...
This is on either the last part of July, or the middle part of June, or last part of June, or the first part of July.
Why don't you go ahead and read them if you don't? I'll record it.
Do you want me to read this? I took 15 men out on a patrol, find enemy down in the dugout hole, lost 1 man. 1 killed, 10 of the Japs due to prisoners taken. 1 of the enemy I had to kill was young, not more than 14 years old. Not too happy about this, but it was him or me. Hope this will all end soon. Can't hold any food down till next time. And this is some part of July. took I think it was the last part of June, took a patrol out, send men out on patrol. Sniper's bullet hit me on the left eye, grazed bone. Man in front of me stood up and bullet went in left shoulder and out the back. I had a hell of a time getting him back to aid station. Plugged the holes with mud using water from my canteen. Medic stopped blood from my eye and dressed it. Returned to my patrol, headache like hell for 3 days. And I have another one, I think, company dug in, they sent us up a hill to bring ammunition up to the machine guns. I had 6 or 8 men bringing ammunition up. Anyway, the company dug in, Japs raising hell all night, printed, rain hard, hole full of water, ready to kill anyone I find. The Jap sneaked close to my hole. He said, "Got a cigarette, Joe?" I threw him a hand grenade. How the hell did he expect to get away with this? My name is Ernie, not Joe. When I tossed him the pineapple, I said, "Here's a whole pack." Joe smoked him in hell. I found him in the AM blown to pieces. I thought, next best thing to a cigarette. Went out with a patrol, this is in June, went out with a patrol of 10 men, found a Jap base, camouflaged at the hospital, used field glasses, 1 man wounded by sniper. Got a closer look, saw Jap soldiers going in and out with guns and ammo. Used codes to call for a strike. I got a radio from a Marine and called a strike by a Navy plane. They came in and blew the places to hell. And here's one here of July. I don't know what date. My Colonel Obie O'Brien told me he was going to stick a set of lieutenant bars on me. Recommended a Silver Star. I told him all I wanted to do was get the hell back home. Never saw him again. Found out later he was killed and got the Congressional Medal of Honor. Best soldier I ever met. Would like to live through this damn war. Maybe the man upstairs will help. I will never get this thing out of my mind. I lost a lot of my buddies. June something the 19th, I guess a bullet grazed the bone below the left knee. Bled like hell, treated by a medic. Sore but okay. Took Jap sniper's bullet over left eye. Patched by medic. Seems okay. July something or other, I don't know. I don't like all this killing, but guess it is necessary to get out of here. Badly wounded July 1944, before I left the island was told by Major Kenny Dolan, headquarters, that I was to receive a Silver Star and a field commission as a lieutenant. Got a whole bunch of, that's about it.
Is that it? Is that what you
Yeah.
did?
I took 15 men out on a patrol, found enemy in a dugout hole. Oh, there's another one here. Maybe this is the right one. I got another one here someplace. They started firing and they coming in there yelling and screaming and hollering like crazy. There was about 5,000 of them, that's all they say. I don't know. It sounded like there was about 50,000. And they did all kinds of. They must have had some artillery too, because they fired. And the shells were going back over and off to the side. I think we're talking about Frank's outfit. A company was up on a hill. We were down in that flat area there. We shouldn't have been either, because we had mortars. Mortars is a high-angle firing weapon, and they're supposed to be fired from a defilade position, not out in the open. That's the reason. That's what they were made for. You can fire them from in the back of a hill. You put an observer up on the hill, and he directs that fire from those guns. But anyway, they started right, then they backed off. I can't recall what the hell went on when they you know how a dog will go at you and then back off. Maybe it was just to try to just scare us or move us the hell out of there or something like that. But then I heard some firing from up on the hill. I take it for granted that must have been A Company, and C Company was over on the right-hand side of us. And they got a shell right on top of them. I don't know, it killed a hell of a lot of men. Because I saw helmets flying all over the place. That shell hit them right on top of the head, a bunch of them. And I recall a shell, and they came up, and I recall a shell going off someplace, and I think it was the one that hit C Company that got me and Joe. And I felt something hit my jacket in the back, and I looked around. I thought somebody was touching me, you know. I say the speed of this shrapnel, it goes in, it's in before you can know what the hell's going on. But I looked at Joe, and he was right in front of me, and he took a piece in the chest.
This was Joe Skiba.
Yeah, he took that piece in the chest, and it looked to me like a hole opened up about that big and big. And he said, something, I don't know, the shell, my head was buzzing from this damn concussion from the explosion. And I saw his lips moving, I don't know what the hell he was saying. And then I felt something running down my leg, and I said, what the hell is this? And I reached around, I came down, and I had a handful of blood. So I knew I was hit too. So then my big concern, I said, I'm not dead or anything like that. The big concern was, what the hell's going on, Joe? I said, you want a cigarette? And I took a cigarette out, and I stuck it in his mouth. And it fell out and fell on the ground. And his lips were still moving. The medic came over, and he said to me, in the meantime, there was shit flying all over the place. And he said to me, are you hurt? And I said, what about him? And I said, what the hell is he saying anyway? And I couldn't hear nothing. He wrote it on a piece of paper. And he said he wanted to know why you're letting him die. Well, I said, Christ, I can't do nothing about that. You're the medic, you help him out. And before I knew it, he just keeled over. And he said no, this is the last words he said. You dirty bastards. That was the last words he said. And he keeled over. But Joe, I warned him I don't know, this had nothing to do with it. He used to run around with a white rag around his head. I said, you're making an awful good target. He said, the sweat comes down on my eyes. He didn't have no helmet on either. I said, you're crazy, get a helmet. No. But then I remember afterwards, and there was a hell of a lot of noise up in the front. And they stuck me on a stretcher anyway and brought me the hell back into one of the first aid tents. That's the rest of it's on the tape there. Mm-hmm. that I sent to you.
Yeah. So then you were on the hospital ship.
Then no, I didn't get on right away. They put on they had a jeep with 3 stretchers on each side. And they had wounded men. I was on the top one. There was men on the bottom. And the shells of shit was flying all over, and they were ducking in underneath there. And the hospital ship was getting pretty close to shore, and they were getting shelled. And so they said that the water was so rough that they couldn't take us out right away. But they could have brought us out with a helicopter, but I guess they didn't have one available.
There were very few helicopters.
At that time, yeah.
A few hours later, anyway, they got us on some kind of a craft and got us out there on the hospital ship. And that's about all I can remember about the damn thing.
And then you went back. Where did you go from?
Well, on the hospital ship, I was on there for a couple of 2-3 days, I guess, and they didn't even know I had anything inside of me. And I told the nurse, I said, I'm in an awful lot of pain. she says, well, I'll give you a shot. So I guess I think she gave me morphine. So that calmed me down a little bit, but I can remember I was in a bunk like here, and there was another one up above me when there was springs was out, and I couldn't lay down because this thing was hurting so damn bad. I grabbed a hold of the springs up there to lift my back up off of the thing. And my hands went to sleep. And then finally a doctor come over to it. Oh, the guy's worse than me there, because there was a guy next to me with his leg off, and they were doing all kinds of things, trying to do something. They didn't want to operate on the ship because it was too much of this. They wanted to get him off.
Well, so where did you go to?
So I got off the ship and I went to the 222nd Station Hospital. And I was there for a few days before they operated on me and took the sucker out. And then that's where I heard that your uncle and Sergeant Baker had been killed and got the Congressional Medal of Honor. So I said, I got healed up anyway, and I went back to my company. And when I got back to the company, there was all kinds of preparations for this and that, and this and that. And I had a problem. I said I couldn't seem to concentrate. My head was going in all different directions. I didn't know it at the time. I had shell shock or whatever you want, battle fatigue and whatever. And back was bothering hell out of me yet. So I went to the captain and I told him, I said, I gotta see if I can find out something about what the hell's going on here. So he sent me over to a hospital, some kind of an infirmary, and they said they couldn't do too much for me there, so sent me someplace else. And then I got talking to a psychiatrist, and he said to me, he said, you got a bad wound in the back. He said, you don't expect that's going to heal in a couple of weeks. He said, it's going to be a while. And well, I said, then let me go back to my company and get this thing over with. And he said, I'll send you back, but he said, if you have any problems, you come back here again. So then the psychiatrist said to me, he said, I think, he said, you've had enough. So he said, we're going to send you home. They said, you're going to go the long way home. So they sent me all different islands, and I went over different places. I don't know, the military has a different way of doing things than they do in civilian life. So finally they sent me to hell home and discharged me.
When was that about? What year?
I was discharged in Fort Dix, New Jersey,
Right.
1945.
Okay.
No longer fit for service. That's what they told me anyway.
Well, okay, that's